Look at this. Joe Biden sends stern letter to oil refiners, blasting them for high prices. They are profiteering. Horrible. And you have him with his fist pumped up and he is screaming at the microphone, angry. Do you know what human emotion he is displaying here? He is being passionate. This is Joe Biden being passionate. He is fighting for you. He is motivated. He doesn't want you to pay money at the gas pump. And he wants to lower those prices. Now, we don't know why the previous administration or even several years ago, gas was $2 at the pump. Apparently, companies weren't being greedy then. I guess like all these corporations, they got together and they said, you know what? The Democrats are in power. Now with Joe Biden, we don't like him. Let's get greedy. Let's get greedy with it. And all of a sudden, all the companies, they stood together and they got very, very greedy. And the prices got very, very high. And apparently, this is the explanation. I will tell you what the actual explanation is. You see, several years ago, I know it's difficult to comprehend this at this point, but gas was actually around $2 at the pump. However, certain very intelligent and smart people, like movie actors, a child by the name of Greta Thunberg, decided to shame politicians. And they couldn't live with the shame, so they decided we need to transition to a green energy, to have environmental policies, right? Because it's good for Mother Gaia. And because of that, they passed regulations. So a lot of these oil refineries, they invested their profits into transitioning, okay? Because the left really likes this. The left loves transitioning. Instead of actually maintaining their facilities and their storage capacities, they had to transition. Now, all of this is building up for several years until Europe created the energy crisis due to the pandemic. Okay? In their infinite wisdom, if you guys remember this, they said that if we can only save one life, shutting down the economy is worth it. So they shut the fuck down the economy. And they created the energy crisis. So, Putin, I know the Democrats like to think that he's got this magic wand and he can just wave it around and he's puppeteering the European Union and he's puppeteering the United States and he's causing all of these prices to go up. And he goes like Wingardium inflation, and all of a sudden in the United States there's inflation and the people are suffering and they're like, oh, this grand wizard Putin. I mean, in order to believe this nonsense, you must also believe that the leaders of the European Union and the United States are so weak and so incapable that Russia can just take advantage of their citizens and they can do absolutely nothing to stop it. Now, I'm not saying that the war in Ukraine didn't contribute to the increasing of the gas prices. Of course it did. But it's not to the extent that the politicians are trying to make you believe. In reality, it's just that the oil companies can't turn oil into gasoline fast enough to keep up with the demand. They don't have the refinery capacity anymore because they invested into transitional energy. And they also can't build more refineries because in a lot of places there are regulations preventing them from doing so. Just so you can understand what we're talking about, right? There is right now in the European Union a project trying to limit the number of cows available for each country. So if this passes, every single country has to limit the number of cows that they sacrifice. This, of course, is going to cause shortages. This is going to cause the price of meat to skyrocket. And of course, they're going to say, well, it's those greedy companies. It's those greedy slaughterhouses that are preventing people from having access to fresh meat. But in reality, it's their fucking regulations. They're never going to admit that it's their regulations that are fucking things up. I mean, can you imagine if the people in power would actually take responsibility? Especially with something like this that gets people really angry? No, their solution is going to be more of the same. This is like the hallmark of every single authoritarian government that existed throughout human history. They cause a problem, and then they will say that in order to fix the problem, we need to amplify what caused the problem even more. And of course, they might do censorship. I mean, right now, the US is talking with social media to ban people who talk against renewable energy. And all it takes, right? Like, all it would take is for people to look at Yahoo Finance to find out why the gas is expensive. 71% of the price that you pay for at the pump comes from the global market. This is not Exxon, it's OPEC. And OPEC, by the way, is run by the government. It's not a private enterprise. It's not a private business that is like greedy and tries to make profit. No, it's literally run by the government. 14% of it comes from the taxes that your government puts on the gas. Notice how, oh my God, gas is so expensive. No one talks about lowering the tax for it. Like, that's fine. And the other 15% is the cost associated with refining, transporting, and selling gasoline. So just like 15% of the price is these evil corporations that are trying to make a profit. They're profiteering off it. But you know what else is interesting? Because like all of this is interconnected. When people think of gas, they just think of cars. But in reality, it's a little bit more than that. It's also tied to agriculture. Because natural gas is required in order to create fertilizer. So now if you have a fertilizer shortage, you'll get a food shortage on top of that. And if this keeps up, you might even get a famine. You know, you won't get a famine in the United Kingdom. You won't get a famine in California. Yeah? But you might get a famine in Africa. You might get a famine in other nations that are not rich enough in order to be able to keep paying for food. Because there's not going to be enough food to go around. So that's a problem. And, of course, Exxon, which, by the way, is one of the few companies that refused to hoist the LGBTQIA plus flag this month, probably because they had enough of Joe Biden's shit. And I don't blame them. Like, can you imagine if you're a company and you have the president directing all of the ire and hatred of the public on your way when you didn't do anything wrong? And they're accusing you, oh, they're profiteering, yes, because your mother is unable to put food on the table. It's Exxon's fault. So they responded, much to the dismay of Twitter, because you're not allowed to do that, by the way. You're not allowed to talk back. I mean, all corporations are allowed to be political as long as they hoist the LGBT flag and they champion the current event. But the moment they have any talking back to do to the politicians, oh, stay in your lane, company. What are you doing? And they're telling people how capitalism works. They're literally explaining to people, look, we are making profits, but you know what we're doing with the profits? We're reinvesting them, you fucking morons. We're reinvesting the profits. That's how it works. It's almost like capitalism. And they say here that we've been in regular contact with the administration to update the president and his staff on how ExxonMobil has been investing more than any other company to develop U.S. oil and gas supplies. In other words, Joe Biden knows about this shit, but it's a PR stunt. Him sending the stern letter and fist pumping, blah, blah, blah. Apparently, they invested more than $50 billion in the United States. But again, like, in the mind of the leftist, profit means that the money evaporates. All right? Like, you need to understand the average person that votes left. They believe, okay, profit, money goes away. It's in the bank of a rich person somewhere. They also talk about how they kept investing during the pandemic when we lost more than 20 billion. Remember how Joe Biden wasn't upset during the pandemic at all? He wasn't concerned that these companies are losing billions of dollars? Oh no, that's fine. Remember when one of the companies got hacked and they were held at ransom and the US government says, well, it's a private matter. We don't care. Remember that? And then they complain that there are no clear and consistent policies. This is the environmentalism we're talking about. And they don't get approval and support for infrastructure such as pipelines. Oh, holy shit. Who would have known? But you know, like, there's no point in arguing. Because either people don't care or don't know what is happening. But there is no way in hell that the people in charge who have pushed for this are going to assume responsibility. Or they're going to change course. No, what they are going to suggest is that we need more taxes, government should have more power, and hopefully we can fix prices. Okay, price control. I think like this is the last level of insanity that you can possibly go. Like the thing that have ruined economies of nations worldwide throughout the history of mankind is probably going to be proposed at some point. Price control. I should make another video explaining why price controlling is probably the worst thing that a country can do. But to simplify it, like if something costs you $10 to make and you can only sell it for $5, you would literally be working out of debt. Like no one wants to do that. It's worse than slavery. Like not only are you working for not getting paid, but when you are working, you're also putting yourself in debt. Like who wants to do that? So that's when you literally cripple the economy, when you do price controls. The Catholic Church is the first that did it. They ended up crippling economies, and then the socialists did it. And they ended up crippling economies. So maybe, we can see it in America. Price controls. Very beautiful. Let me know what you guys think, though. And I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.